Here's everything you need to know before the three-part finale of X-Men 97 airs tomorrow. The showrunner of X-Men 97, Bo DeMeo, actually dropped this list of 6 episodes from the original animated series that he thinks would be a good refresher before we go into the three-part finale. I know that not everybody has time to watch all 6 of these episodes, so I decided to go through and recap them all for you. Our first episode we're covering is titled The Decision. It is the season 1 finale of the original series, and it's here we see the X-Men, along with the help of Magneto, taking on an entire army of Sentinels. These Sentinels, of course, being the byproduct of the Master Mold Sentinel. Now, the Master Mold had been destroyed earlier in the season by the X-Men, but it turned out that Bolivar Trask had recreated it. While the X-Men have their work cut out for them, yes, they do win the day eventually thanks to Charles Xavier and a cartoonish amount of explosives. With the help of Magneto, Charles was able to fly the Blackbird directly into the Master Mold's chest, successfully destroying it, and this would be the last time the X-Men ever have to worry about this thing, right? After this, we jump all the way to season 4 in episodes 3 and 4, both titled Sanctuary. Here we can see Magneto making his grand entrance at a UN meeting where he wants to inform the world about his new plan for mutant kind. Magneto, of course, expresses his disapproval of the way his people have been treated, and while, yes, he's resorted to violence several times in the past, he now offers a peaceful solution. In the form of Asteroid M, a brand new mutant sanctuary that Magneto had just created in Earth's nearby orbit. His message broadcast around the world, thousands upon thousands of mutants take Magneto up on his offer, and honestly, at first, it seems like it's working out great. That is, until Magneto gets usurped by the power-manipulating mutant Fabian Cortez. Fabian seemingly kills Eric and then quickly frames his death on the X-Men, allowing him to take control. Now, Fabian believed that mankind didn't deserve the grace that Magneto was offering. Once he takes control, he orders Asteroid M's defensive missiles to be launched at Earth. Thankfully, the Master of Magnetism still lived and was able to show up just in the nick of time in order to save the day. Now, while the X-Men had been running evac, in his anger, Magneto decides to lash out at Fabian, and in doing so, destroys his very own creation. We then jump a few episodes ahead to One Man's Worth. We see that the present-day timeline has been horribly twisted. The X-Men don't exist, and the mutants we know and love are fighting for their very lives. This leads to Bishop and his sister Shard coming back in time from the future in order to recruit the help of Storm and Wolverine. They tell them that this timeline is horribly wrong, and they need their help to go back in time and stop the assassination of a 20-some-year-old college student, Charles Xavier. This plan was actually put into motion by Nimrod and a Master Mold Sentinel in the year 2055. It turned out Charles Xavier was the biggest threat to a future where Master Mold rules over all, to a future where mutants don't exist. So Master Mold tasks his time-traveling mutant Fitzroy with going back to the year 1959 and making sure that Charles Xavier never becomes the man that he's supposed to be. Thankfully though, due to, quite frankly, a ridiculous amount of time travel, Bishop and company do stop the assassination, saving Charles Xavier's life and setting both the present and future timelines back on their correct path. Finally, we jump all the way to Season 5, Episode 9, titled Descent, where the secret origins of Mr. Sinister are revealed. Our story follows Nathaniel Essex, a man in the mid-1800s who is becoming increasingly obsessed with Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. His motivations at first honestly are pure. His wife has fallen ill with what appears to be a hereditary illness. All Nathaniel really wants to do at the beginning is everything in his power that he possibly can to save her life. His studies lead to him discovering some of the earliest mutants, but his peers weren't impressed by what they were seeing. They actually called him a madman and then accused him of using cheap parlor tricks to try and convince them of what he had found in his studies. But make no mistake about it, Nathaniel wasn't exactly a redeemable person. He was a genius, yes, but his obsession with mutation grew worse and worse. So much so that he began experimenting on himself, but worse than that, began experimenting on poor, helpless mutants. Any mutant that he could get his hands on became his prisoner, became his test subject, all in the name of furthering his own genetic mutations. Eventually, the town learns of what he's doing, and while they're not exactly taking up for mutants in any way, they can't stand to see what Nathaniel has turned himself into. He eventually gets chased out of town, his own wife ends up calling him a monster, and we see him completely abandoning his own name and adopting the name Mr. Sinister. Also, it turns out he was working directly with Jack the Ripper, which I thought was really weird, but also funny. A little extra context at the end of this, I wanted to add that they included Bastion at the end of last week's episode. Bastion was a character in the comics that was a Master Mold Sentinel and Nimrod fused together, that ended up getting sent through the Siege Perilous, eventually coming back out of it a human, albeit a horrible and bigoted one. I think knowing that makes perfect sense of why those episodes were chosen.